Thanks, Heather. Hope everybody's doing good and everybody's healthy, and looks like we're all getting back to work here pretty soon, if you're not already back to work, or at least going back to the office. So this is a presentation that people have asked about us giving, and so we thought that we would do that to try to help you guys out and manage stress and anxiety and depression of kind of going back to work amid a pandemic. So that's the goal with today. Like Heather said, please ask any questions. I'm big on the comments. A lot of things that you guys say are really, really helpful for everybody else in here. If there is questions, like Heather said, she'll try to pick them up and ask them. Most of those are going to be asked at the end, but please make some comments along the way. Those are really beneficial for everybody. And if you have something that you really need to be answered right away, send it to Heather and she can let me know. So first things for you, we always want to talk about the benefit. We'll do this quickly, talk about what Blomquist is, and these are the things that we're doing. So we want to help with any life challenge, including anxiety, stress, and depression. So that's our goal. We want to help with really any type of challenge. Anything that's challenging for you, we want to be a part of. So, the benefit is free for the employees. It's 100% confidential. Most of our sessions currently, and this is starting to change, are phone or video sessions. There is, and you could always have your session like that if that's what you were interested in. But in the future, we're going to have people back in the office. A couple of our offices, I know Ogden and Orem and Logan are having people come into the offices again. So like I said, that's up to you whether you want to come in or not, or you want to do a video or a phone session. But we're here to help out with those things. Really simple to make an appointment. Just please give us a call. Call the Blomquist number. You can see it on usually any of our documents. You can see it at your work. It should be everywhere. Our emails, our website, all of those things will have our number. We also have the 24-hour crisis line. If we're ever not open or not in, there's always a counselor that is on call that's available to talk to you if you're in some type of crisis. The hours are usually, it says 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., but usually it's 8 a.m. nowadays, and we're there even on Fridays and Saturdays. And then we do these free online presentations for anybody that would like to attend. So we want to try to help as many people as possible. So, okay, so let's talk about returning to work. I was just trying to look up some information and some statistics, and this is one that I found that was interesting, that 54% of people are now saying they're worried about going back to work because of getting COVID-19, and that is a worry that we're all having. Just here in Utah today, there's 215 more cases of COVID-19. So something for us to think about and try to reduce that worry and that stress and manage it as much as possible. So this is a very timely presentation for all the things that we have going on. So I thought about, well, what are some do's and don'ts of returning? And a lot of this information is going to be from the CDC and other really good outlets that could be really beneficial to us. So some of the do's of returning is, we got to wash our hands. Probably I'm going to talk about 3 things that I think are really, really important and seem to be backed by a lot of science and things like that. And washing your hands is one of those. If you're not able to wash your hands, and everybody knows by now we're washing our hands for at least 20 seconds. There's singing the alphabet song or whatever it is, the birthday song to get through those 20 seconds. But it's what we're trying to do. If you're not able to do that, the hand sanitizer is going to be something that's real important. We want to try to avoid touching our eyes and our nose and things, because what we do is we touch surfaces. And then if we touch our eyes or our nose or our mouth, then it's most likely that we can get some germs in there, whether it's COVID-19 or some other form of sickness. So a lot of policies and procedures are being put out. Hopefully your job, your employer is going to be doing some of those for you guys. And if not, I want you to ask about those. How am I going to be safe there? What types of things? And that can come up all along the way of returning to work. And you want to continue to follow some of those guidelines that we're having. I know here in Utah, we have it's once a week now, they'll have Angela Dunn and the governor and everybody will get on the TV. I watch it on Channel 2, but they usually will tell us what some of those guidelines are. We're really big on face covering. So I told you 3 things were going to be real important. Washing your hands is a huge one. Face coverings is a huge one. And then that social distancing is a really big one to keep us safe and to try to keep this from spreading as much as possible. So some of the do's is you want to clean and disinfect, things that you're going to touch a lot, the doorknobs when you're going into the building. If you're, typing on the computer, anything that you touch, needs to be clean and disinfected most of the time. So for me, when I'm going into the office, I'm going to have to go in, 5 to 10 minutes early, because I'm going to disinfect everything that I'm going to be touching in my office because other people use it. And I don't want to, it's hard for us to always think about not touching our faces and everything like that. And so, the more you can disinfect, the better. So something to think about. Huge thing for whether you're coming to see me or you're going anywhere, if you're sick, please stay home and unless you're going to go out for medical attention. So that's an important one. Another important thing to think about is informing your supervisors, your job, if you have a member of your family that is sick, because most likely you've been exposed to that. And some things that we're learning about, COVID-19 is that they spread it without even knowing that they have it, for sure for the first couple of days. And some people, that asymptomatic type of thing, so that they don't even know that they have it at times, and they can spread COVID-19. So for sure, if you have a sick family member, make sure you're letting your employer know. As much as possible, you want to try to avoid using other people's phones, their desks, their offices. And if you do, just like I said, I would want you to come in a little bit early and make sure you disinfect it, because that can help you feel safe. Even if there's really, no significant germs, we can't see them, we don't know. So disinfecting them, for one, helps me to feel better about it, but could help you to feel more relaxed about what's going on. With this situation, there's a lot of different things going on. There's a lot of different perspectives. Some people are ready to return to work and aren't worried about COVID-19. Some people are worried and aren't feeling like they're ready. All of those emotions are fine. There's no one way to feel about this. What we're talking about today is just ways to keep us safe and ways to manage some of the stress and anxiety and depression if you are feeling those things. But there's no correct way to feel. We're in a pandemic that we haven't seen in 100 years. So something to think about with that. It's okay to talk about your feelings, and I would suggest doing that, especially with people that you're comfortable with. If that's a therapist, fantastic. We'd love to meet with you. If that's a friend, a family member, I want you doing some of that stuff too. That's for sure a do in everything that we're talking about. We want you to take care of yourself. If you're eating well and getting rest and exercise, you're going to feel as good as you can. Your body's going to feel as good. And if you're doing those things, then most likely you're going to be able to fight off diseases a lot more likely. Your immune system's going to be better. And spending time with people that are close to you is really important. I've talked to some people, some clients, some people I've worked with that are worried about their kids. I did some presentations right away when that earthquake happened, and people were worried about being at work when their kids were at home. And one of the best things we can do is have a plan. Talk to your kids about what to do. Talk to your kids about proper hygiene and what's going to be beneficial for them, so that you can feel comfortable and that they can feel safe while they are at home without you. Mental health issues are real and very much a part of our society. That's why Blomquist is around. That's why counseling is around. Please let us help you if you're in need of that. Like I said, calling the number can do that really easily. Another interesting thing is know your rights. You know, on the CDC website, you know, you can get on there and look at, as an employee, what are my rights about returning to work and everything like that. And there's a lot of really good information about that. And one of the biggest things I want you to do is just talk to your employer. Let them know about some things going on and when you feel safe and when you don't. And that can be really beneficial. But there is things out there that can be helpful. So some CDC guidelines for you guys. We've talked about communicating, you know, with your coworkers, with your supervisor. For one, that reduces stress. But two, you know, we want to talk about the things that you're worried about a little bit. That social distancing thing has helped us a ton, and we can't do that forever. Hence why we're getting back to work, and more states are doing that. I think every state's getting back to work. We want to try to distance ourselves still. I know in my office, we're going to try to do that. And when in the counseling that we're going to be doing, I'm going to be wearing a mask and the client's going to be wearing a mask if we're face to face. And we're going to try to distance ourselves, you know, 6 feet away, and try to follow some of those guidelines, because I want my client to be as safe as possible. And I would love to be as safe as possible. And we interact with a lot of people, and we don't want to give it to each other as much as we can. So, like I said, identify some of those things that cause you stress. Talk openly about those types of things, and talk to your managers about any mental health resources you might have. If your company has Blomquist Health as one of its benefits, then this is a great resource. If you're with a company that doesn't have Blomquist Health or doesn't have an EAP, we would love to have you guys, you know, look into an EAP or talk to your supervisors about that. We're going to talk about the things that you have control over and the things that you don't. And that seems to cause people stress and causes us to worry. So we're going to talk about the things you do have control over. There is a lot of them. There is some things that we don't. Those couple more guidelines for you guys. A daily routine is something that's hugely important. And we would love for it to be like the routine that you had before this happened. You know, a routine that feels really good, you know, and that starts with sleep. Sleep is a huge thing. And if you can keep a good sleep schedule, that's going to benefit you. We're talking about that a little bit more today. You've seen this come up a couple times already about the exercise type of thing. But taking breaks from work is going to be hugely important. And usually that's about every hour. You know, stand up from your desk, stretch a little bit. You know, if you have a lunch break, take a little walk. Outside is fantastic, you know, is hugely important for how we feel and how, you know, we're going to process some of these emotions and feel a little bit differently. So, you know, if you're working at home, and even if you're at work, you know, have some good boundaries about when work ends. And when work ends, then that's home time. That's time to enjoy myself. That's time to do some hobbies. That's time to spend time with my family, doing some things that make me happy. So very important part. Mindfulness is something that's a little bit newer to us. It's, you know, it's been around for a while now for sure, but it's newer, and it seems to have huge benefits with people. It helps people to really calm down and relax and think about things that are important. If those are things you're interested in, YouTube's going to have some really simple things. If you're like, you type in, you know, simple mindfulness techniques, you know, or even talking to a therapist, and we can give you some of those. It can be really simple. It can be really beneficial. You want to do things you enjoy. Like I tell you, there's not a lot of happy people that I've met that don't do things that make them happy. So make sure you schedule some of those in your life. So some more guidelines for you. Knowing the facts is important. And that's an interesting thought nowadays with all of the information we have on Facebook and Twitter and people putting different things out. I would want you to find sources that you feel really good about and be informed about those. Some ones that, like I said, that I believe we can depend on. The CDC is a really good one. Our state health officials, like I said, I like to listen to that that presentation that they do, and listen to, Dr. Angela Dunn and the governor about what we're doing here in Utah, what we're trying to do to keep us safe and things to watch out for. So a lot of good things like that can be really, really beneficial. And I think we want to follow, the scientists and the people that are really looking into this stuff to keep us safe. Remember, you have a very important role. In the past, I've talked to you about that you guys are all superheroes. We're all superheroes in this fight against the pandemic. And we can keep each other safe, and we can have a lot of fun, and we can get our economy up and running and everything. At the same time, we can do things that are going to keep us safe and keep other people safe and healthy as possible as we go along. Remember, this is an unusual situation that we're in. Sometimes at your jobs, you might have limited resources, and that can cause a lot of stress. Make sure you're talking about those things with your employer, and you're finding out things to reduce some of that stress and to make that as okay as possible. I talked about being informed. I don't want you to spend all of your time being informed. I want you to spend some time taking breaks from reading and listening, and social media. I want you going for walks. I want you doing hobbies that you enjoy. I want you doing things that get you out of watching the news all the time. Some news is okay, but don't burden yourself with too much news. Connecting with others is something that's going to be around, whether it's a pandemic or not. We have lots of different ways to be able to do that, whether it's phone calls, emails, text messages, send them a letter, write in your journal, video chat, Zoom, Skype, all of those different types of things. Social media can help you to bond with others. I know we did this with my mom on Mother's Day, and that seemed to be a really helpful thing. Find ways to be involved with each other and to be safe. Find ways to interact, but at the same time, keep a little bit of distance. Do things that are going to help you to bond with each other. It can be really, really helpful. Helping others is something that can be, something that's beneficial for all of us. Looking for opportunities to help someone. Simple things. I know I'll go to Costco and I'll text a couple people that are in my family. It's like, oh, I'm going to Costco. Is there anything I can pick up for you? So that they don't have to make a trip out there. Simple things to look for opportunities to help someone out can be really, really beneficial. If you're struggling with any substance type of things, please reach out for help, whether that's to us or the crisis line. Or there's lots of different services that can help with that, but we'd love to be a part of that if you'd let us. Same thing with any mental health conditions. If you're struggling with those right now, stress or loneliness, please reach out to us and other people. So those are a lot of the guidelines that I wanted to kind of bring up with you guys, and some do's and don'ts of some things that can be really, really helpful for a lot of people. I talked about how facts can be really beneficial. Here's some facts that I think are real important for us. One thing to remember is, even if you do happen to get this virus, the likelihood of your immune system being able to fight that off is very high. There is some people that are more likely to struggle with that, and we know who they are. People with autoimmune types of things, people that are in an older demographic, and so something to kind of think about with that. And so if that's one of you, then you have to be even more careful. But most likely, we're going to be able to fight that off. And I want you to remember that, even out of all of the people that have gotten COVID-19, especially here in Utah, 99% of them survive. They're going to be okay. Their immune system's going to be able to fight this off. Hugely important to keep that hope and to think about that. 92% of people never even have to go to the hospital. They're able to distance themselves and protect their families and stay home. And so that's a hugely, hugely important thing is that it's a big deal that most people are going to recover and going to be okay. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be careful, because we never know how our immune system is going to react. We never know if we were able to spread it to somebody else, somebody important to us, how their immune system would react. We want to be safe, but we also want to realize that most likely we're going to be okay. Simple things that you can do. We've talked about some of these briefly already. Social distancing is huge. If you can be 6 feet away from somebody, then do it. It's a very important thing. The CDC talks about wearing a cloth mask a lot in public. And they're saying a cloth mask because they want to save those medical masks, those N95 masks for, the doctors and the nurses and the people that are on the front line that are seeing people with the coronavirus every day. And so those cloth masks are what they would like us to wear to keep it from spreading as much. Washing our hands is huge. So those are the top 3 things. If you do nothing else, those are the top 3 that could help. Obviously, covering your cough and sneezes is really important. And we talked about reducing how much you touch your face. So knowing some signs and symptoms, really beneficial. So, if you have a fever, a cough, shortness of breath, sore throat, congestion, body aches, some smell and taste and the chills, those are things that the CDC and the scientists have said, the doctors have said, that are a lot of the things that to be a little bit weary of when they happen. And when that happens, maybe that means it's time to go get a test to see if I have that, so that I can distance myself and keep, people safe. There's a few other ones that come up. Those are the main ones to think about. Told you I wanted to talk to you about what you're in control of, and this is kind of something for all of us to think about. Do we have an internal locus of control or external? So internal means I make things happen. Look at the things I can do. I can determine my future. I get to decide these things. That's the internal part of that. The external part means things happen to me. It's just going to happen, and there's nothing I can do about it. And so why should I try? Because it's going to happen no matter what I do. Your locus of control is really important. And so some things that I think that you guys can control is, your mindset, your positivity, the things that you eat, are hugely important. How much sleep you're getting, what you're telling yourself about you, about your ability to control things, what you're telling yourself about the good things about you. Are you always telling yourself negative things? We're in control of that. And it doesn't mean it's easy and it's just going to change like that. These are habits that you've created, and you need to, start changing to more of a positive way of thinking. And then you're able to control some of your self-talk a little bit more. Something that a therapist can help you with a lot. Something that we talk about with people a lot. Your exercise is hugely important. Your activity on social media. I'm on Facebook and other types of things like that, and I can control my activity. And if there's things on there that are being posted that I don't want to see, or that are coming up, you guys can easily block people. You can easily ignore things that are on there if you so choose. Or you can just skip by them, whatever you feel like is best. Like I said, there's a lot of different information out there. In my opinion, I want to go with the scientists, and I want to go with the doctors and the people that are seeing this stuff happen. And so that's what I choose to follow as much as possible. Where you spend your energy is important. How much you help others. So this fox little diagram over here is actually things that kind of talks about what we're going through today. So, you can control if you want to follow the CDC guidelines or not. You can control if you want to follow social distancing, limiting my social media. All of those things you get to control. The things you can't, nobody knows if this is going to go away soon. We speculate a lot about a second wave. And it's great to be prepared for a second wave. it's probably not good to be all stressed out and worried that, oh no, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm not going to be able to make it through. And that keeping you home and making you so that you're not going to be productive and happy in your lives. We want you to be able to look at the things you control and to be able to feel good about those and feel like you have some control over your life. If it's all things happen to you, then this is a lot harder and it's a lot difficult to deal with these difficult things. So if you're ever upset about some situation, think about, well, what can I control in this? And I have to do the best I can with that. So I wanted to talk about stress. That's a big thing in our lives. Stress is not going away. Even before COVID-19, even before a pandemic, we had stress in our lives. We had this stress because of time and money and relationships and jobs and all of the things that we have. So stress is not going away. We want to learn how to manage stress as well as possible. That's the goal of what we're doing. So let's talk about a few things that stress does to people. So when we're stressed, we're not able to handle as many things. You know, if we're pretty stressed about a pandemic or whatever it is, then our relationships with our kids, with our husband, with our wife, whatever it's going to be, that's going to be more strained just because we're stressed and then we're dealing with another issue. So managing our stress can help a lot. I've heard that 75 to 90% of the reasons why we go to the doctor is because of stress, because it lowers our immune system and makes it more likely that we're going to get sick or have something happen. So managing that stress, and we're going to talk about ways to do that today. Some of those guidelines and things we've already talked about and controlling what you can control are ways to manage stress. So stress kind of makes us look at just the bad instead of the positive. So really important things that we can do is we can think about, well, what are we grateful for? What are things that are going well? Even in a pandemic, there's tons of things that we can think about that can really help us to be successful. Another thing that is part of the stress when we're trying to manage it is realizing that some forms of stress can be good. There's this type of stress called eustress, and it's a moderate amount of stress that you can interpret as even beneficial. So for it to be that, it needs to be short term. We need to think that we're going to be able to get through this. So a pandemic, if we think we are able to get through this, we are making progress. And we said just a couple months ago, we shut everything down, and now we're starting to open everything up because we feel like we have a little bit more control over our lives and we're going to be able to get back to doing some things that we were doing. We need to have some precautions why we do that, but we're able to get back to a lot of those things. You know, we want to, think that these things are perceived within our coping abilities, and it can be actually motivating to be successful. Deadlines are motivating. But it's a form of stress. A goal is a motivating factor, pushing you to do something that can feel exciting. And these things can improve our performance. So as you can see, some stress can be really, really beneficial for us. And we want to, our way of determining if it's going to be a eustress, that helpful stress, or a distressing event is really our perception. What we feel like we have control over and what we feel like we can do about it. If we perceive it as a challenge, we can get through a challenge. Challenges are good for us. There's not too many good things that come in our lives that aren't challenging. Relationships are challenging. Jobs are challenging, and so working through those things, we build great relationships. We build a job that we're really happy about. So challenges are good. If it's an obstacle that we can't get over, that's when it becomes a problem. When we feel like we're stuck and there's nothing that we can do about it. And so that's when it turns into a distressing event. So think of those things as challenges rather than obstacles. So one way I really like to talk about stress and managing life is kind of this reservoir idea. You guys all have seen a reservoir. Here's a picture of one. So reservoirs, they have water coming out for drinking or for whatever it is. They also have water going in, whether that's from rain or snow or a river. And so with this is just like life. If the reservoir lets too much water out, then it becomes a desert and isn't functioning the way that it needs to be. So it always needs water to be put back in. Same thing with our ability to manage stress. We have things that are causing us stress. Right now we have a pandemic. We have families. We have kids that we're trying to homeschool, and now they're out for summer and we're trying to do all of that. We're trying to work, money issues, all of those things and many, many more are pulling water out of our reservoir, out of our ability to manage life. So we have to put water back in. And there's simple ways to put water back in. Some of them that I like to start with, I've told you guys about exercise, sleep, what you eat, talking to friends, talking to people that you trust, reducing stress. Some of your hobbies can be ways to put water back in. Going for a walk can be a huge way to put water back into your reservoir. There's hundreds and hundreds of ways to put water back in. I would love for you guys to leave this presentation thinking about what ways can I put water back into my reservoir so that I feel stressed less, so that I'm less worried about the things going on. What are some ways that I can put into my toolbox so that I can benefit from stress more and it won't cause me so much trouble? What are ways to add water back in? I'd really like for you guys to like I said, leave here thinking about that. So let's transition to anxiety a little bit. Think about anxiety, and that's one that's coming up with returning to work and being successful with that. So anxiety is a medical condition. Some symptoms of that is nervousness, fear, worrying about things. Every person has some anxiety, and anxiety is actually something that's necessary for our survival. When we have these reoccurring thoughts that we can't get out of our head, when it's causing us to not do things that we'd like to do, when it's making us really, really worried about returning to work, some of those anxieties might be becoming more than what's necessary for survival. We're supposed to have some of those to keep us safe, but when it becomes too much and it's taking over other parts of your life, then that's where it could turn into some type of medical type of condition that we'd love for you to work through, whether through counseling or through talking with people and doing some of those other things. So if it's taking over parts of your life, then it's becoming too much. If it's just a little bit of worry about an earthquake or COVID-19 or something else, then that's a normal part of anxiety, and working through some of those things, talking about them, developing a plan. Some of those things we talked about earlier can be really beneficial to reduce that worry. So let's talk about who anxiety impacts. So anxiety is the most common mental illness in the US and probably everywhere else. So 40 million adults in the United States, 18 or older, have some form of anxiety, and so that's 18% of the population every year. That's like 1 in 5. So there's 100 people here today. Is that 20 people have some, anxiety type of mental illness? The great thing about it is it's very, very highly treatable, but only 37% of people are trying to get some treatment. Hence why we talk about some of these things. Please, go to a counselor, talk to Blomquist, whoever it is, if you are struggling, if it is taking over parts of your life and helping your life to not be as successful as you want it to be. So here's some symptoms that I wanted to put up there for anxiety. So you need to be experiencing these a good amount the last 6 months to be able to get some type of anxiety diagnosis. So one thing that's great about EAPs is that you don't need to be diagnosed with anything to get counseling and receive help. A lot of other counseling agencies, what they'll do is you need to be diagnosed with something, and then insurance will cover it. If not, then it's all private pay, and it's a lot of money. So you want to, like I said, if you have an EAP, that's a good first step. If not, then make sure that it's someplace that will take your insurance. But so some things with this is stress that's out of proportion to the impact of the events. Right now we're dealing with a pandemic, and that is stressful. But if it's too much and causing you a lot of trouble, then that could be something that's out of proportion. An inability to set aside worry, a lot of racing thoughts or unwanted thoughts is a huge one. Kind of never being able to turn your brain off is what I've heard people say before. Easily startled, types of things. So I've heard of people tell me, there's a feeling of impending doom, and that can be some anxiety or some depression. So that's one that I would want you to talk about and get some help with. So I put this up just to kind of let you know, this kind of goes with stress and anxiety, but I wanted to talk about what our brains are doing. Our brains are wired to keep us alive. They're wired to keep you safe. And so it's going to think about things that we worry about. It's going to think about things that could cause us trouble. And sometimes it becomes overactive. So what we want to do with that, rather than thinking that we're in a survival situation when it's, just some anxiety or just something that's causing us a little bit of stress, we need to go back to our rational way of thinking. And this is a little type of skill to be able to do that. So the first thing I want you to remember is our brains are wired for survival. So it's normal for you to have some anxiety and stress when you're, in that fight or flight type of thing. Sometimes some of that's too much when we're not running away from a saber-toothed tiger or we're in real danger. It's just we're worried about something, and it's thinking this is a survival mechanism. So we can calm that down. So the first thing I want you to do is to become self-aware of how you feel. How am I feeling? Why am I feeling so anxious? What is going on with that? And then validate yourself that it's okay. It's my brain trying to keep me safe. It's okay that I feel some anxiety. It's okay that I'm stressed about this. My body, puts some feelings in me, and then I get to determine whether I want to keep those or not. But it's okay to have them. They're just emotions. Simple thing to do. Close your eyes and take 5 deep breaths. So what I would say is inhale for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, and then exhale for 4 seconds. Is a simple thing that calms your body down and makes you more likely to be able to think rationally rather than being in fight or flight. And then at that time, the next step would be to think about 3 things that you're grateful for in that moment. And so that will get you out of this survival mode and get you more to a rational thinking mode. And you're able to engage that part of your brain. And then from there, it's like, okay, well, I'm triggered by this, specific thing, this particular thing. What is my plan to deal with it? So maybe I'm at work and I'm triggered by being too close to other people, or by not having enough hand sanitizer, or whatever the issue is. Come up with a plan to be able to deal with that. Maybe as I talk to other employees, maybe I bring my boss and say, hey, I'm feeling unsafe in this part of the job. Is there something that we can do about that? Devise a plan with your rational thinking that can be beneficial. And this will help you to move from being fearful to more logical. So that was a good thing to kind of throw in there. Let's talk a little bit about depression now. So depression has some, this is people that are discouraged, sad, hopeless, unmotivated, disinterested. And some of this stuff could come up because we're dealing with a pandemic and lots of stress. So if these things are happening, this could be classified as depression. It needs to happen for more than 2 weeks. And depression is very treatable too, just like anxiety. If it happens just for a short period of time, because we all have some ups and downs, it could be considered just the blues if it's not there for a long period of time and you're just, I'm having a bad day. Okay. But if you have a bad couple weeks, then let's start talking. Let's do something about that. If it's a bad day, you could maybe talk about it, use some coping skills, think about that reservoir idea and things that help, and maybe you could get out of that. If you're not, please go get some help. So like we talked about, anxiety is a big deal. Depression's right up there with being one of the most common mental health disorders in the United States. So in this one, we got 15.7 million adults. So that's a lot. That's a lot of people that have some depression every year. And then there's, 2 out of 100 young kids and 8 out of 100 teens have some serious depression. So looking for some signs of that. And here are some of the signs that could be a part of that. And if you're seeing these in your kids or yourself, then, let's do something about it. Let's see if some of the coping skills that we talk about help. If that's not it, then maybe it's a next step up of talking to a counselor. And we can go through some more things like that. But some depression, these need to last for a couple weeks, but you're having some sadness, maybe some anxiety or irritability. You're losing interest in things that used to be really good for you. You're some feelings of worthlessness or hopelessness, or some things, maybe you're not sleeping or eating as well as you used to. Something to think about with that. Some suicidal thoughts is a big one that sticks out for me there. If you're having some of those, please call our crisis line. We have, there's a suicide hotline. There's forms of help. Please tell someone and get some help for that. That's something that we really, really want to do stuff with. The sooner you're able to get some treatment for depression, the better. The easier it is to relieve some of those types of things. And so, as you can see, 80 to 90% of people respond very well to treatment from depression. The problem is people wait nearly a decade. They wait 10 years when they're feeling depressed before they actually do something about it. It's much harder to get them out of that depressive state when they've been doing that for so long. They have habits that now go along with that. They've changed their thinking patterns. So the sooner you can get in for some help, the better. The sooner that we can help you to be really successful with that. So we're going to move into skills and coping skills and things to treatments for these types of things. Stress management, we've talked about that. There's a couple of those that we've talked about. Can be really, really beneficial to reduce anxiety and depression. Relaxation techniques. Anything that is relaxing to you is the best thing to do. It could be listening to music. It could be going on a walk. It could be spending time with family. It could be taking a bath. What is it that helps me relax and helps me to feel good about life? Like I told you, I'd love for you to think about some things that put water into your reservoir. Some relaxation techniques can be that. It could be really helpful. Replacing some negative thoughts with positive thoughts. Okay, well, that's a negative way that I could think about this. What is a positive way? If I was being optimistic, how would I think about it? If I was talking to a friend, what would be one thing that would come up? What would I tell them? Could be something that's beneficial. Your support network is huge. We've talked about exercise in multiple slides. And so just kind of want to reinforce how important exercise is. To me, it's a natural anti-anxiety, a natural antidepressant to really help you with some of that. Some more treatment things. We've talked about therapy. This can be combined with other types of treatment. It can be with a couple. It can be an individual or families. A lot of improvement can be seen right away. So treatment, talk therapy. Therapy is hugely important. Medication's a part of it. To me, what I would say, my first step would be, okay, well, let's see if I can cope with this. Let's see if I can work through some of this anxiety, stress, depression on my own. If that's not helping enough, then the next step is, let's talk to a counselor and see if I can get some help. And let's work through some of that. If that's, like I said, most likely that's going to help some. It might help enough that you don't need anything else. I would want you to bring that up with your therapist. If you're not feeling well enough, let's talk about some medication and what's the plan with that. And then, maybe we do some counseling and some medication at that point, and that can be a really good thing. Couple things to talk about with you quickly with that. Usually antidepressants, anti-anxiety takes 4 to 8 weeks to kind of get in your system and get you feeling as normal as you will with that medication. If at about the end of that time, 6 to 8 weeks, you're not feeling too much different, then I'd want you to talk to your doctor. They do a pretty good job at scheduling a reoccurring appointment, maybe a month later. I would want you to push for that so that you can go back in and let them know how you're doing. If it's great, fantastic. If it's not so good, I'd want you to talk to them about it a little bit. Sometimes when people start feeling good, they're like, I'm feeling great, I don't need this medication. Sometimes it's the medication that's helping you to do that. And so if you're going to go off your medication, make sure your doctor knows and you guys have a plan about how to do that. The recommendation is to take it for at least 6 months, even when you start feeling good, and then that you can kind of make some progress with that. A lot of times, talk therapy, medication goes well together. Early on in the slides today, it talked about a schedule. We're going to talk about scheduling a little bit. My opinion is I believe morning and night schedules is probably one of the best things you can do for your health and your happiness. And so that morning schedule that is tailored to you is hugely important. It can be really, really beneficial. So, a lot of people talk about waking up at the same time as important and setting a morning routine. This is what I do in the morning. These are the things the steps that I take that help me to have the best morning possible. There's books and everything written about this. There's one I listened to recently. He would talk about, I get up at 5 a.m. every morning and I do these exact things for 30 minutes. 5 a.m. is a little early for me, but doing this exact things for a half hour would be really, really important for me. And I do a lot of that. I try not to look at work emails right away. Even if they're in there, I'm like, I'll get to that when it gets to be work time. Right now, it's my morning routine. So keeping some boundaries with myself is important. The news is probably not the perfect thing to be looking at, especially now with a lot of the coronavirus and stuff going on. If that's part of your routine and you really feel that's beneficial, make sure it's tailored to you and you feel good about it. My suggestion would be to avoid that until a little bit later, until you're able to do some other things that could calm you down and be kind of a gentle startup to the morning. Some things to think about could be, maybe it's a podcast you listen to or some music, or maybe you do some meditation. Like we talked about, exercise is a huge thing to do at that time. I'm going to talk about some questions that could be really beneficial, and you could put these in your journaling. Some people talk, even if we're working at home, they're talking about getting dressed for the day, and that helps people a lot. If you are a person that doesn't help me very much, remember, this is your morning routine. It's not mine. Devise what's going to be helpful to you and do that. Talked about finishing the day. Same thing with a morning routine. I want you to have a finishing the day routine. So a good sleep hygiene. These are the things I do to finish the day that help relax me, relax my mind, and help me to get ready for the next day. Some people will say that if you don't think about any problems, or you're so busy throughout the day, then when you go to bed and you're laying there, that's when all the problems come back from the day because you haven't been working through any of them. It's good to work through some during the day. Put some time to, okay, well, I want to work through some problems. I want to plan out some things. Work through some of those issues throughout the day, so at night, when you have some calm and some relaxing, that it's not all these problems come flooding back. So, the electronic thing, an hour before bed, that blue light seems to cause us to stay awake and cause us trouble. Relaxation, what are some relaxing things I can do in the evening? Maybe that is meditation. Maybe that's reading. Maybe that's, doing some stretching or some yoga or whatever it is to help calm me down. If you're struggling with sleep, It's not a great idea to have a lot of naps because that makes it so your body's not going to be as tired at the end of the day. That's why exercise is important to cause you to be tired and tire your body out a little bit. And naps kind of take away from that. 20-minute rule. So if you're laying there for 20 minutes, the suggestion would be to get out of bed and do something calming or relaxing that can kind of help. Maybe that's reading a book. Maybe that's, doing something that's going to help to calm you down for a little bit. And then once you feel a little bit more tired, then go back to bed. Journaling, like we talked about, and talk about some questions. So to go along with the questions, these are some questions that I thought you could start the day with. You don't need to do all of these questions, but these are some really beneficial things to be starting the day with. What am I going to accomplish today? What am I grateful for? That grateful for thing is huge for our mental health and what we're able to do. How am I going to get outside today? What am I going to do with that? How am I going to move my body? Because I know that's important for, releasing some of those endorphins and helping me to feel better. Who am I checking on today? Who am I connecting with? Who can I talk to? And this is a new one that I think is really beneficial for this presentation. How am I creating a safe and calm work environment for me? What do I need to do to create that? How, if I went into work today, how would I be, how am I going to feel safe and calm? And really thinking about the things to do that. For me, like I said, that's getting there a little bit early and cleaning some stuff and sanitizing everything, getting ready for the day so that I feel safe. Questions to end the day. So what went well today? What are some things that were good? What am I grateful for? That keeps coming up because it's really, really important. What act of kindness was I able to do? And who did I connect with? How did I reduce stress and anxiety at work today? What helped me to do that? And then the last one, are there any changes that I need to make? Because I just went through a day. Are there any changes that I need to make so that I can feel more safe and reduce anxiety tomorrow? And just writing those down so that can be beneficial to work through that. Last slide for you guys. Wanted to talk about some more coping skills. We've kind of talked about some all along this presentation, but managing stress, we talked about that one a lot. Make sure you're doing some things that are meaningful. Some of that meditation, I put Jay Shatty's name up there because I know for a while he was doing a meditation with everybody in the morning. So if you wanted some ideas about that, but he has a podcast that I listen to and like. Some people talk about spiritual things like praying, working on goals. So doing some meaningful things can help you cope. We talked about controlling what you can control and journaling. The deep breathing thing, we talked about that. A safe place, I really like that, and that's why I put up this picture because, it's thinking of some place that would feel really calming and relaxing and using your senses to work through some of that and to calm you down. So I noticed the mountains, I noticed the color of the water, the trees, all of those things. So those are things I see. What could I touch? The rocks or a pine cone or the pine needles, what would that feel like? What would I smell if I was there? So using your senses can really calm your bodies down. And you can create different emotions by that. But even it's like, okay, well, if I'm sad, then I can do something that will make me happy. It's watching a fun movie. It's laughing about something. It's looking at some memes on the internet. Maybe it's a cat video. Maybe it's talking to someone that always makes me feel better. And do something to occupy your mind. Once you've worked through some of that stress, once you know why you're anxious about something and you have a plan, then you can say, I need to do something else that will occupy my mind. Maybe that's going for a walk. Maybe that's the safe place thing. Maybe that's deep breathing or journaling. But there's a lot of different things that can kind of occupy your mind. So if you guys have any questions, maybe I'll briefly look through those and see if Heather saw anything that anybody saw. But
yep, so a lot of people are worried, I don't know if worried's the word, but they're not looking forward to going back to work.
Yeah.
So one person said, I've become really attached to working from home. It's my new normal. How do I mentally and emotionally prepare for returning to the office?
Yeah. So that's a good one. For one, I don't think it's a bad idea to talk to your employer about ways that maybe you could work from home or things that you could do with that. Another thing to do with that is you used to go to work every day probably, and there was some good things to remember about that. So I would tell, maybe it would be good to write down, maybe this would be a good journaling thing, to write down some things that you liked about going in. For me, I really like going in and seeing people face to face. I like seeing the employees that I work with, my coworkers. I like to be able to talk about other things besides work all the time that can be enjoyable, and just getting out of my house can be really beneficial. So there's really good and bad things of working at home and working in the office. So talk to your boss, journal some things, and come up with some things that, maybe this is something that I could look forward to. If you can't work at home, what can I look forward to doing at work would be some ideas.
Okay, so someone said, we've had several people in our house who thought they had COVID, so we had them tested, but it turned out they didn't. It caused major panic through when I told my when I told my employer and their employers. How do I manage that and the fallout with these maybe times?
So help me with that. So they've had people in their family that thought that they had it, and they turned out that they didn't. And then
Yeah.
what's the last part of that, Heather?
So it caused major panic though when I told my employer and their employers,
Hmm.
like her family's employers or his family's employers.
Right.
How do we manage that with the fallout and the maybe times?
Yeah. Yeah. So for one, I think you did the right thing. And when you're doing that, I would tell them what is we had some symptoms, and we felt like that we could, and we just wanted to make sure. We don't know if we did or not. We got tested, and I will keep you posted. And most likely your employer should be able to be confidential about some things, and they have to really think about, well, should I be talking about this information yet with other employees until we actually know? Maybe if there's some people that they worked closely with, then they should let them know that maybe they could get in a test. We've had some people that have, maybe tested, and they don't know if they have it yet. But some of those coping skills that we talked about today could be really beneficial, because you need to calm yourself down. You need to be able to relax. You need to be able to, like I said, going for a walk, moving from fear to logic. Okay, well, this is a fearful thing, and I do feel worried about this. That's a normal type of thing. Okay, what can I do about that right now? And like I said, doing some of that deep breathing, the grateful thing, and then what can I do to help this situation until I find out about the test? How can I calm myself down until then? And like I said, those are the things that puts water in the reservoir. So whatever that is, that's what I would suggest to do until you hear back about that test. But I do think it's probably right to let your employer know, and let them know where you're at with that I don't know if I have it. I had some symptoms, and wanted to get tested.
Okay, and then someone just made a comment. They said, like many of you, I'm so used to being home that venturing out again on my own seems scary. I know it's not logical or healthy thinking, but it's what is going on right now.
Right. Normal feelings. I have some of those. I know my wife has some of those feelings of, that we've been home and we feel like that's safe. And if you can do that, like I told you, social distancing is huge, and something I'd want you to keep up if you can. We know that there's some things that keep us safe a lot. Those things that you can control keep you safe. The things that the CDC put out: social distancing where you can, wearing a mask, washing your hands, all huge things. I've heard some data that says that if you wear a mask and the people that you're with have a mask on, your likelihood of getting it, if somebody had it, is 5%, which is really, really low. And so let some of those things, let some of the information benefit you and allow you to get out and do some things that you enjoy. Maybe it's starting easy. Maybe it's starting with going for a walk. Maybe it's starting with getting in your car and driving to your work, whatever it is, without even working, and just letting some of those experiences reduce some of your anxiety and your stress, some of that exposure to some of those things. But like I said, we can keep ourselves relatively safe if we're doing the things to protect ourselves.